Welcome to A Dose of Feel Good. I'm your host, Whitney Bischoff, and today we are talking about the power of the pause. You can see full show notes at doseoffeelgood.my.canva.site. Now let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back, everyone. We are at episode 22, and we're going to be talking about the power of the pause today. And it seems especially fitting. We are officially into October, and I think depending on where we live, it's different weather, different seasons. It is definitely a little chilly out here in South Dakota, which I'm not super stoked about, but I am for sweater weather and just really taking a second to pause. So our topic today is incredibly fitting. Sometimes the universe and the weather forces us to pause when we want to go. And today we're going to be talking about how do we prioritize those pausing moments so that, the universe doesn't have to come in and do it for us. So I want to start with a question. And I want you to really think and answer honestly for yourself. When was the last time that you took a break? And I'm not talking about just the vacations or the opportunities to refuel or refill your cup or charge your battery or whatever you want to call it, but really thinking of the last time that you took a break for you before it was at the point where you needed to do that, right? Like, I think we all can understand when we get to that point of like, I really need to do something about this, or I'm going to get in a place where it's really bad. And so we take those breaks, we go on the vacation, we, do all of those things. But I think really asking ourselves when the last time we took a break because it was something we wanted to do and not needing to do. I think we are not great at building in the pausing and the reflecting into our daily lives. We might do it in seasons, or like I said, if something comes out in our life and we really need to take those moments, but we're not great at really building into this practice of our daily lives. And because of that, we get to a point where we're burned out, and no one wants to be in that place, but we allow ourselves to get there. And I think it's because we have this like competitive work mentality that whoever does more, shows up more, does all of the things, it proves that they have maybe more worth than the people who aren't doing as much. And so we live in this world where we're just having this competitive mentality of having to go all the time. And I think especially as humans, we lean in that direction because we want to leave a mark on the world. We don't want to just sit back and let the world happen to us. We want to be remembered when it is our time to go. And so we're constantly going and doing, and especially as the helpers of the world, right? We want people to be impacted. Or I even think back in my personal life of when I wasn't feeling super great about myself, what I was doing, just in those really hurt moments. And I think back now and I genuinely say, I never want someone to be in that same low point that I was at. And so because of that, we continue to say yes, we continue to show up, we continue to do all of those things, but often at the expense of ourselves. I think we should all recognize that there's always going to be more quote unquote work to do. It will always be there. We can never get to a point where we can fix all of the things that we see in our lives. Like, that will always be there. But I think when we pause, we can see our impact in that work that we do from a different point of view. So I think what that means in practice is that while we think that we have to continue to say yes and do more, when we pause, we can see that we're already making that impact, whether that's in the one-on-one conversations that we're having, whether that is in the creative things that we develop. But I think when we really pause, we recognize our growth through those moments. We can also celebrate what we bring to the table, and that we don't have to continuously do more and be more to have that impact. But it does take that second to pause and really recognize that, and not just when it gets to the point of no return and going on vacation and all of those things that, yes, are really helpful, but it's in the day-to-day practice. Even so much of, I know I'm getting to that point where I'm reaching burnout maybe, because I get frustrated really easily. And so even in those moments, and that can be a really great launching point for this topic, is that you pause when you're frustrated. And so that allows you to then respond with kindness and in kind moments, whether that's for yourself or for the person maybe that is pushing your buttons a little bit. But it is the pausing in those moments, and we can recognize when we're responding out of anger or agitation. But when we do it, even outside of those interactions, and really apply that to our life, we can see such a big impact on how we choose to show up. I think this can be demonstrated in a few different ways. But I think, honestly, currently where I'm at, it's almost like there's just this swirling chaos. And so I am definitely a person that copes by just doing more and more and more often, so that I don't have to honestly pause and reflect of like, how is this really impacting me in this moment? And I have a lot of medical things that I'm navigating. And I was joking with one of my friends that I don't even have the ability right now to advocate for myself to doctors or whatever, because it just feels like there's so much chaos, and just in life in general, there's all of these unknowns. And so as a coping mechanism, I just go and do more so that I can not have to deal with how that actually is feeling. And so I think then, at least for me, it gets to a point where I'm forced to pause because of my illness, or because of, if you think of like when you get a cold, it's like, oh, someone was telling me I need to stop, right? I think it's those very similar things that if we're not practicing that pause, then we get to a point where it's not even a fun pause that we're doing, but our bodies are forcing us into that. And at least for me, I then get more impatient, I get frustrated easier, and I get to this point where I'm just constantly exhausted. And it's just not a fun place to be in. And so I've started to really show myself that I need to schedule in pauses to just reflect, or like when I'm maybe having a negative emotion, I pause and I'm like, where is this coming from? And just identifying those pieces, and then prioritizing in my life that I really do need to be pausing. While yes, the vacations, all of those things are definitely part of the puzzle, I think it's especially impactful when we are taking these pauses in our daily life, because it really does have an impact on how we show up for ourselves, but also those around us. And so I think thinking of it in a few different ways. So first, pausing to reflect personally. So what this means is not letting ourselves get to the low points. And so it might be, and I'll give some practical pieces here in a bit, but it might be just genuinely thinking of, this is the emotion and I just need to, freehand it out or talk it out. I'm definitely more of a talker. And as weird as it sounds, but it might be just out loud processing to yourself, but it's taking that pause to reflect, why am I getting to this point? Or why am I reacting in this way? I think it's also important to think of like pause to share. I think when we share, whether that's at our lows or the highs, whatever that looks like, it promotes this help-seeking mentality for us. I'm definitely someone that would prefer to isolate, but I think when we share when we're not doing well, one, it makes it less lonely because we've all been there. Sometimes we think that, oh, it's just me going through this, but the reality is that everyone's going through something, and so it normalizes that and promotes you as somebody who is a safe person for whoever you're opening up with. And so it makes it so we're not all navigating this journey alone, and really forces us a little bit to also just not sit in the funk, which I think is really good. And then the last piece, I think, is pausing when we're frustrated. So taking a second to ground ourselves, ask again, why am I frustrated by this moment? I think a lot of the time we take things personally when they're not personal. So we ask ourselves, like, why am I responding in frustration in this moment? And it really then goes to like this balance of advocacy, of choosing when to speak up, but also knowing that there is a mental and emotional toll. And have you taken enough pauses where you can really take on that piece in the moment? And it's okay if now's not the time. It's not that we'll never speak up, but it's that I've taken enough pauses where I can really take this on, and it's not going to have that toll where if I'm just responding out of frustration, that's not good for anyone in that moment. It's not going to bring any progress or compromise or whatever that looks like. And so pausing in that frustration will really tell you whether this is a moment to speak up, or if maybe I need to pause and collect my thoughts and really go about it from a different strategy. So it's not saying that we're not going to speak up. It's just, am I in that mental space where I have the ability to do so? And then really knowing that this has to be a routine to pause. So the vacation should not feel like an escape. When we finally get that opportunity to go on vacation, it should just be an extended practice of that pausing that we do on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. So what can you do with this information? I have a variety of things that I think are just really helpful to put into practice. And I know I've started to do this. I've talked with a few people of just the power of the pause. I'm like, that's just kind of a rolling thing in the back of my head of, am I pausing? Am I building that into my schedule? And so the first piece here is really making that pausing a part of your daily routine. And for some folks like myself, that might be, setting random alarms throughout the day of pausing. Where are you at? Reflecting. You might be writing that down. I also have started to build that pausing into the end of the day of like a reflection moment. So I think I've said this previously on the podcast, but I do a daily gratitude, and I get to see year over year all of my gratitudes for each year, which is super fun. But I do that. I do some journaling just to like kind of get it out of my head. But it is that pausing at the end of the day and really making that a priority. I think it can also, the second thing is to pause and reflect through creativity, whatever that looks like to you. I used to be like a songwriter. I won't say any of them were a good, but like that was a mode to just get out some of what I was thinking or feeling in those moments. It could be, again, through writing, journaling, but it can also be through art as well. So whatever that creativity piece is, that really helps you to reflect on maybe where you are in that moment. The third thing is to pause when you're frustrated. And I know I've mentioned this a few times, but instead of reacting, we're going to choose to reply with intention. And whether that's replying in that moment or outside of that moment, pausing when we kind of feel our heart rate go up or we feel those emotions, right? Instead of responding in those moments, we are going to take a second and be intentional about how we approach those conversations so that, one, we don't make it worse, but two, it doesn't then have that toll on us either. And then the last piece, which I think is one of the biggest ones for me, is pausing and not only doing that personal reflection, but sharing that where we are with others. I think especially if it's hard, if we maybe aren't in that great space or we're not choosing to prioritize ourselves or whatever that looks like, I think find who your people are and write those people down, so that way when you get to those moments, you know who your point people are, who are, one, going to hold you accountable, but also support you through whatever it is you're going through, so you don't get to a point that is just crushed on the ground. I think we've all been there and felt that, but we don't want to get there. So share in those moments and recognize for ourselves that our burdens are not a burden to somebody else. The people who want to show up for us will continue to show up for us, and they want to hear when we're not doing as well as maybe we've shown people. And I think they then also remind us that we are inspiring people through what we're going through, that they can also go through that and come out on the other side, that it really isn't the end of the world. But I think also reminding ourselves that we've faced challenges, we've conquered those, and the low points don't have to continuously be the low points. And I think when we truly pause to share in those moments, really balancing that personal reflection of, pausing, how did I get here? But also pausing to share, so that way we really aren't going through life alone, and having those reminders, I think, keeps us going. And that's all that we're really looking for at the end of the day. So yeah, we're going to wrap this episode up here. So take a second for yourself, and really choose the power of pausing and not going all the time. And just, I can't wait to hear from you all of how this practice has changed your life. I know it has changed mine, particularly, I would say, over the last year or so. And I hope that it's a practice that really makes an impact for you as well. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you are feeling ready to conquer the week and let your impact ripple out to the world around you. Let's connect on Instagram and Threads at Dose of Feel Good Podcast. If you're loving the podcast, I'd love it if you'd hit that subscribe button and leave a review. Until next time, share your own dose of feel good and never underestimate the power of positivity.